I did it, guys. After years of failure, I finally acquired 17-inch cold flex arms. This has been my biggest struggle yet. Plateaued at 16 inches for years, trying everything you could practically think of and never seeing gains. Every other muscle in my body grew. Chest, back, legs. Never had issues. But biceps and triceps remained stubborn. And this is due to the fact that I, unlike many other fitness influencers, am a real lifetime natural. 2, am shorter, being 5'5.5", and 3, have really bad arm genetics. And I will continue to state that because it is the honest truth. Not only are my insertion points terrible, so even now the appearance won't look as good as some other dude with the same measurement, their responsiveness isn't great, and I have hypermobility. So the contractions I get on many exercises tend to not feel the best. So I truly had it rough. And it's to the point where many stated that I had hit my genetic limit. Alex, give up already. 16 inches is all you can ever hope to achieve. It's your frame. Accept it. Just go into maintenance mode. It's okay. You have big arms already. But I didn't believe what they were saying. In my mind, I had to open up the correct door. Most of them were false. Led me down a path of plateaus. But once I finally dialed things in, the gains came along. And I would say that in the last 2 years specifically, that's when I really started to see improvements. 16 and a half last year, and then this year they finally hit 17. So know that who you're listening to today is an outlier. Not in a genetic sense, but from a work ethic and determination standpoint. This is a crazy achievement, and none of my past lifting history and starting point indicates that I was blessed for this. I'd actually compare my arms to calves in terms of growth rates. This was the hardest thing I ever did. And I know it sounds crazy considering I benched 405, did 4 plates on the way to chin. That just required consistency with proper strength programming that I mostly had it down right years back. But the arms, one failure after the next. So that's why I'm so passionate when I'm talking about this. And it's honestly a huge win to the natty community, because if I was able to do it, what makes you say that you can't? Or that a huge percentage of lifters are unable to? In my view, the new standard is going to have to be 17 if you're willing to put in the work for the next 10 years. That's what I did, and I was below average in my opinion. Now, if you say I'm average at best, great, you can match me. You're probably taller, and because you're coming across my videos with many others who learn the hard way what works and what doesn't work, that's going to save you a lot of time. Like, I probably could have gotten these results way back. I guarantee you that moving forward, anybody who comes across my channel is going to look at me and say, oh, you're just another mini Lee Priest. You're a natty version. You have great arm genetics. Because there's so few guys at your height who have 17s. Or if they do, they were all freaks. That's what people are going to start saying now. Especially in random response videos. It's exactly what Natural Hypertrophy said in our interview and previous videos. Schrodinger's genetics. I'm the cat in the fucking box that came out with the bigger guns. Thing is, though, I showed you the journey. So for all you black pillars out there who keep talking about genetics like it's the only thing that matters, buzz off. Keep living amongst each other in your negative filth of low standards and never amounting to anything in life. Keep embracing that doomer mentality. While guys like myself continue to crush it and empower other naturals to do the same thing. Because if I was able to do it, me, you could do it too. The question is, are you willing to do what it takes? So, rant aside, how about we start diving into the methods? First, I want to talk about triceps. And I have to say that this is what has contributed to the majority of my mass gains, because buys are still lagging, I'm not going to lie. Therefore, they have a lot more potential, proving that 17 is not actually my limit. I can probably get 17 and a half. And maybe in a very long time from now, maybe in my late 30s, I'll have 18s. Who the heck knows? I'm not giving up. But talking about triceps, right? What I'd have to say is that when I got shredded for the first time, that's when I realized there was a serious problem. I'm specifically referring to the long head, which is considered to be the meatiest part that gives you that outer extremity width. It's the back part of your arm. Now, when I was single digit, my long head was practically inexistent. The lateral head was so much more prominent, which makes sense considering the compound movements do work it to a good extent. But that's not what matters for making your arm looking bigger in a relaxed state or even flexing where the tape measure is gonna hit the sweep. And so this proved to me that compounds were not working in this regard. And at the same time, the isolation work that I was doing wasn't biased enough for my long head. It was all lateral and medial. And the biggest mistake I ever did was listen to powerlifters who recommended a very specific style of extensions and push downs, which is basically not going to make your arms look the biggest. It might help your bench press in terms of carryover, but you won't get that massive appearance. What I mean is, with the push downs, it was always V-bar, a single rope, narrow grip, being in this plane right here. JM presses, which is tremendous for the medial and lateral head. Overloading with accommodating resistance on your presses to build joint angle specific strength. Definitely works for that purpose, but you're not getting that long head effect. In reality, if you want to work the backside, it's essential that you get out of internal rotation into external rotation where shoulder extension is present. And the biggest thing that changed the whole game for me was switching exclusively to those variations. I only do push downs in a long head style. If I'm not using double ropes or my spreader bar or dual cables where I'm out here instead of here, then it's a waste of time, straight up, in terms of hypertrophy. If the goal is just restoration and having extra volume in that can assist the bench, that's a different story. But for bodybuilding specifically, I recommend this simple switch, and you will instantly notice that your numbers drop like crazy because your long head is so detrained. So at the time, I was doing like 85, 90 pounds on the V-bar push down. When I switched to the long head version, I was under 50. So I had to work my way up from such a low number and try to catch up that performance with basic progressive overload. And I didn't periodize it. You don't have to for hypertrophy training. Everything I've done for arms has been double progression. But the main thing I'm trying to say is never isolate your arms if it's not going to hit the long head. So that was the primary exercise. Push downs with more range of motion back here. And then to complement that, I threw in overhead extensions. Now, some people are suggesting that the triceps may not benefit from stretch-mediated hypertrophy due to their length-to-tension relationship, and the overhead position itself might bias a lot more medial head comparatively. But we also have data showing the opposite, that, yeah, your long head will grow more. So the way I see it is, even if you're not getting extra growth, we know that the long head is still being stimulated more compared to other exercises. Like overhead extensions will build your long head more than a traditional push down or skull crusher. Regardless if it's optimal or not, I still feel it's a worthy exercise. And for me personally, I like to include it as a part of a superset if I'm only going to do a single push down in a workout, or as my secondary motion. So really for triceps, when I isolate, it's only going to be those two movements. A long head push down, any variation that I choose, with an overhead extension. And I made a full video talking about this, but it's either going to be top down with the cables or bottom up. But it's the same movement pattern, just at a slightly different angle. And those two movements alone, again, no barbells or dumbbells for the most part, have actually grown my long head. I can see that the biasing effect was real because I was essentially shutting it off with the wrong movements. So having an understanding of biomechanics, actually listening to those dudes, has proved to be extremely valuable. So it's truly that simple. I'll even do the same thing with my chest expander. I'll bring the arms behind the body like this, and I'll extend. There you go. Or I'll do it violin style. So those are the two movements I do with this. And then it's going to be cable stuff. So in terms of volume and progressive overload, I haven't changed a single fucking thing. The only variable that's been modified is my exercise selection. That's why I'm always telling you guys, it matters a lot what movements you decide to hit. If that's not dialed in, you're really missing out on those final gains. And for those who've been plateaued, that could be the game breaker. For me, it certainly was. All right, so besides isolation, another thing that's very important is our anthropometry. I learned that depending how long your arms are and how good your leverages are for bench, you might not respond well in the triceps department. The tension might just go all to your delts and chest, which is exactly what happened to me for years. You would think that the solution is, okay, you're going to want to minimize their recruitment, therefore incorporate partials, more overload training, basically training like a powerlifter. That should technically do it, right? But in reality, because there's less range of motion in the triceps, there's less arm bend, you're actually doing less work. And what made me really understand this was looking at IPF competitors who specialize in the bench, specifically the ones with massive arches and wide grips. The arm bend is so little, such that it's above parallel, that all of them, for the most part, have lagging triceps. They have become efficient at moving weights that way. The technique has been mastered, and the joint angle strength has improved. But I'm never wowed when I look at these dudes compared to the taller individuals who have flat backs and a worse bench comparatively. Like out of the big three, that tends to be their worst lift. Coincidentally, they always have bigger arms. So how is it possible that within these competitors, you can see such a size difference in the arms? I cracked the code, guys. It's the arm bend in the bottom. Partial presses are not good for hypertrophy. They could be beneficial in developing joint-specific strength while developing the tendons and ligaments, but for creating a powerful stimulus, you need that elbow to get low. So that explains why some people could get away with a minimalist approach. It's just their build. But I'm going to suggest that that's actually the minority. Just like we have people who have super short arms, those with excessively long arms, like orangutan style, where they're just built to pull, that's not the majority either. Most of us fall somewhere in between. And so, me being built for the bench, I realized that I had to make my arms longer. And this simple correction gives me more total workload for my triceps with effective reps while allowing me to lower my actual isolation volume. So for me, benching always blew up my chest. The pumps were insane. I can feel a strong mind-muscle connection. And year after year, the measurement would literally go up, always getting tighter in the shirt right here. But my triceps wouldn't improve. So this is what I meant by torso dominance. But I believe this is attributed because of my build. And so finally, there's a solution to this problem. And that is, you need to primarily use extended range of motion lifts. My first real taste of this being the Larson press, where just by cutting out leg drive, you have to work that much harder in the starting position. And that in itself is going to create grindier reps, especially in the midpoint. So the triceps do fatigue a little bit more comparatively. Then of course, when your legs aren't fully planted, it's harder to maximally arch. So the Larson press does feature slightly more range of motion, but it even goes beyond that. The next step was eliminating scapula retraction, literally benching with a 100% flat back. And when I started doing that, wow, the range of motion really changed for the better. Now I can see that I wasn't cutting anything short. And coincidentally, I started to feel my triceps so much more on my presses. For once, they became a limiting factor, even though you're getting more stretch in the bottom on the pecs, which of course made me connect the dots with other effective motions. Diamond push-ups being a good example. It wasn't just the close grip action that stimulated the triceps more. It was the inches added extra range of motion. So the arm bend is way greater in the bottom. So once I finally understood this, the next step was doing even more variations to get more out of less weight. The best one to date being the incline close grip bench. 30 degrees, that's all you really need. When I do this, let's say a guy has a 7-foot wingspan and he's doing a flat bench and his elbow is pointing directly to the ground, like the worst leverages you could possibly imagine, right? That's what my short arms look like when I do that low incline bench. My arm is pointed way down and I lose over 50 pounds compared to my flat bench. So not only am I getting a biasing effect in the upper chest, it also seems to develop my triceps way more. And I feel like this is the real close grip bench that people need to be talking about, because just changing your grip width a little bit from here to here is not going to do much on a flat just because of the angle, which could still be beneficial, but it's not drastic enough. Whereas inclines provide an angle that will disadvantage most lifters. So we're all on an even playing field. Now, besides that, I recently received the Arch Nemesis Swiss bar by Bells of Steel, and I'm loving it so far, but know that I haven't made any gains with it yet because it's only been 2 weeks. But in the long run, similar benefits will apply because I'm getting inches of extra range of motion in the bottom. I don't have to lift as heavy, so the stimulus fatigue ratio is on point, and I feel the triceps working that much more. So I can talk all day about exercises, even the seated anterior delt press. You look at the elbow angle, even if you're not touching your clavicles, it's still deeper than most presses. All that contributes and will strengthen your weak links, just make you more resilient as a whole. It's all synergistic. So all I'm gonna say is this: get more out of less weight instead of overloading. That is the true path to correcting torso dominance. Now, besides triceps, let us now briefly cover biceps, which is by far the least important part of this video. And if you didn't watch the segment at all, you'd probably still be fine from all the previous tips I gave, because the tris is really where the majority of mass gain is going to come, especially if you've been neglecting your long head. And even in my case, my biceps are still lagging. They're still by far my worst muscle group, and they've experienced the least amount of gains during this journey. So some improvements were made, but I certainly got more to make. I'm just staying true to the process, but this is the information I'm going to share in terms of how I've been training over the last 2 years. And this is the time frame I'm specifying because, as many of you experienced, gyms were closed for a long time, and so my exercise selection had to change. And in the past, I did not have access to this ghetto cable setup or the Olympic dumbbells with heavy enough weights. I'd be tapped out at around 35 pounds. So considering I was limited in progressive overload with higher exercise selection, I had no choice but to resort to the most basic curls of all time: straight bar and easy bar curls, along many variations within those. But the main thing has been focusing on the basics out of necessity. And it turns out that this worked out just like it did with the old school grades of the past. And you know what's really funny about this? You had all these influencers talking trash about the barbell curl, saying that, oh, you got to do behind the back cable curls to induce stretch mediated hypertrophy, when it turns out that the biceps might not actually benefit from this due to their length attention relationship. And so it would appear that curls which emphasize the mid-range, so gravity operates in a straight vertical line whenever you have a 90-degree angle with that, so that L formation, those kinds of curls are best for bicep hypertrophy. They'll provide the same gains as those stretch curls without impeding recovery as much. Now, I know I made a recent video talking about weighted stretching for bis, but I already gave you my disclaimer. And I'm personally not doing those movements. And even though I have seen tremendous success in recent times, so May until now, using incline dumbbell curls, I cannot conclude that I would have made worse gains just doing it seated from an upright angle. And truth be told, 3 months is not enough to cause all these bicep gains. So what that means is the majority of my mass had to have come from barbell curls. There's no other way to phrase it. Now, am I saying that's the best exercise you can do? No, because the barbell might not actually be lined up correctly for your anthropometry, and I've actually stopped doing them for that exact reason. I noticed that when I got heavy enough, aka curling 117 pounds, strict form, no swinging, though my shoulders were raising, I would sometimes get overuse in my elbow area. And the reason is my arms want to do this chicken flapping effect because the resistance wasn't coming straight through the forearm, and I'm a rather broad guy. So this is where switching to dumbbells comes into play. That's basically what I do these days. Now I can perfectly accommodate for my build while getting some extra supination in there. So if you're gonna curl with a bar, the best option is the easy bar, by far. But even that might not be optimal for you after a certain point. So dumbbells are the ultimate solution. Cables are great as well, but you wanna set them up in a way where the mid-range is being emphasized. But for me personally, I'm just rolling with the dumbbells. The primary exercise is gonna be the standing dumbbell alternate curl, or I'll sit down with my back pressed against the pads, upright of course, curl like that. And I'll usually use between 45 and 50 pounds. So that's for the mid-range, which is most important. Now, I also hit the short position because you can probably get some benefits from doing that. Always before the mid-range curl. And there's a million different ways you can do this. Again, consider what I said earlier, that the exercise selection doesn't matter as much, but whenever the resistance is heaviest at the top, you're maximally squeezing those biceps, you know you're getting that effect. So with dumbbells, that could be as simple as leaning forward in a spider formation. It could be the concentration curl. It could be cable curls from a low or high position. And then there's my personal favorite, the preacher machine curl. I especially love this because the arms are in front of the body, so you're getting a little bit more short head bias, which is really the belly of the bicep, that mass, as well as greater stability from the pads, and the resistance is not like a traditional dumbbell or barbell preacher curl. You're getting a lot of tension at the top. So I will always do those when I'm at the gym. The simplest setup, get the job done, can't go wrong. But yeah, that's really all I have to say regarding isolation movements. If we're going to talk about compounds, I don't think it's going to serve you in the best way. You've already heard my story with the chins, but if you want to get a bit more biceps from them, then you're going to want to watch this video on bicep chin-ups. You can also experiment with occluded chins, which really do make the biceps a limiting factor. And then gymnastic rings allow for that extra supination, and it better accommodates your anthropometry. So you're less likely to experience elbow discomfort, and you will get a better contraction. And there's also the headbanger style chins, where you're doing this motion right here. That tends to be pretty good for biceps. But again, none of that stuff is superior to curls. All we're doing is compensating. And I would say that even in the calisthenics world, people are isolating with gymnastic rings and other little motions. So that's all I have to say about bicep exercise selection. The more knowledge I acquire, the less I have to say about training them. Now, I want to talk about training volume for the arms. I run an upper lower program, and through experience, I found that you don't need more than 9 to 12 sets a week of direct arm work. So that'll feature a maximum of 2 exercises for biceps and triceps per workout. Now, could I creep that up to 3? Would that result in slightly more gains? Potentially. But as of right now, I've seen nothing but tremendous success, not only in terms of the measurements going up, but also recovery. And you're not leaving the gym, which is a huge bonus considering the fact that I rest 3 minutes between sets. And that's another reason why I have dropped the volume. For one, my other compounds have become more efficient in netting indirect stimulus to the arms. And then because I'm fully resting, I don't have to do high volume arm workouts. I'm able to produce maximum force on all of my sets and achieve the best progressive overload. And there's never any junk volume. I just pick the absolute best exercises. One for the mid, one for the short. I'm freaking good. And along that, my intensity is extremely high. I now look like Jeffrey Verity Schofield, where my faces are horrendous. I appear like I'm freaking constipated. But that's what it took to bust through these arm plateaus. And I've even seen some experienced coaches like hypertrophy coach saying a similar thing. Some people might need to go to failure in a bodybuilding context. That's been me. So although I am a massive fan of reps in reserve, I use it every single week, year round, and will continue to preach its benefits. I only do so on the big, heavy compound movements, not little isolations like extensions and curls. I find that you don't have to complicate it to that level. Just go all out and you'll know that your arms are being maximally stimulated. Like if you can't grow from that, if you can't grow biceps and triceps from 12 sets a week with my level of intensity, what makes you think that 15 sets is going to change things? It won't, because the fundamentals are off. So I focus on progression, not the pump, even though I will get that every single time. And I give it my absolute all every single time. Laziness is never a factor. Whereas in the past, I would oftentimes skip the arm work, or I would half-ass it because, oh, I did great work on my compounds. Yeah, that's a great way to not go anywhere. Just look at the minimalists who promote that philosophy. Oh, and one more thing about intensity is that for those days where I'm only doing a single motion, I might incorporate rest pause, where after I go to failure, I rest a good 10-15 seconds tops, and I get a few more reps in. And I continue that about 3 times, and I'm done for that exercise. So this is on top of the normal volume. And I'll often include a same muscle superset, which nets me no more than 5 extra reps. So if I'm doing a double row pushdowns, I'll immediately go into an overhead extension. So that's how you can be efficient. And like I said, if it's one exercise, I'm going to focus on the mid or lengthen range. It's not going to be the shorten for those days. So that's the approach. It's low to moderate volume with high intensity and high rest. So besides training, the final thing I can tell you guys is to consider bulking. I did not gain my way to bigger arms. That was never going to work at this level, and considering the plateaus I had for years. What got the job done in both these 2 years was bulking and cutting. Now, before some people claim, Alex, you didn't gain any arm muscle because you're heavier. My response is, yeah, I'm heavier, but I'm also leaner. So if I gain half an inch on my arms, of which the arm still has the bicep vein, which last year it did not, it's less fluffy, it's less soft looking as a whole, and in general, I look less fat while being stronger overall. What the fuck do you think it is? It's lean muscle. Now, does that mean I'll keep 17-inch arms when I cut back to 170? No. I think I'm going to lose another half inch, but that would still be 16 and a half inches compared to 16 lean. So I'll take it. It's an improvement. And that's what I'm telling you guys. You're going to have a bulked arm measurement and a lean measurement. But the thing is, you have to improve your previous bulk measurement to also do the same thing when you're lean enough. Otherwise, you're just going to keep spinning your wheels. And I can tell you, the years where I maintained my leanest state, which is going to be 2018 all the way to the end of 2019, my arms didn't improve, even though I had less training experience and should technically have had an easier time. I believe if I would have applied these recent strategies back then, so the training combined with the bulking, I would have had 17-inch arms in 2020. So I sabotaged myself by milking the leanness a little bit longer than I should have, which I didn't mind. I enjoyed it. It was fun rocking the pound for pound gains and looking pretty aesthetic. But when you're trying to get serious, you have to get uncomfortable. And it turns out that my 2 most successful bulks yet, the 405 bench journey, and now this, where I'm in the 190s, still with abs, still with some definition. It turns out that that's when I built the most muscle. I always kill it when I gain weight, and every time I cut back down, I look significantly better. This has been the trend time and time again, and I don't see it changing anytime soon. So that's what I recommend. Gain some freaking weight. And the general consensus for that appears to be about 20 pounds of fat. Yeah, you gotta grow everywhere. And when you're heavier, you're also lifting heavier weights. So the tension is gonna be greatest on those bis and tris. You have enhanced recovery. Like, this is how you overcome plateaus. You eat, and you train the proper way. That's it. That's my simple video. Were you expecting something more magical? Like some unknown routine that you've never heard of before? Well, that's what it is, guys. Nothing I said today was complicated. It's honest work, subtle changes that make all the difference. And at the end of the day, you just have to be patient. So I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope it really inspired you. And now I want to hear your feedback in the comment section. Can you relate to my experiences? Have you corrected your imbalances using a similar approach? Let's hear it. And I'll talk to you all next time.